know we're at the end of the year and it's cold outside. It's the winter season. So what happens if you have to put your house on the market? Selling in winter. It's the real estate show. Welcome to the Real Estate Show. My name is Rick Naples. I am the owner-broker of Zone Realty, LLC. You zone your home. Wintertime. It could be an extra challenge if you need to put your house on the market. You know, they say that when a seller puts their house on the market during the dead of winter, it's because they need to sell the house. Doesn't mean that they're desperate. It just means that something has changed in their life that requires them to sell their home to either buy another one or transfer out to another state or whatever the situation might be. But they're serious sellers. Now, this doesn't mean for the buyer that you're going to be able to have some more incentives to negotiate. It just means that the seller who's putting their home on during the winter is seriously looking to sell that home. Now, for the sellers out there, when you're putting your home on the market during the dead of winter, there are several things you have to keep in mind in order to prepare the home to be accepting to buyers. And I've talked about a lot of these on the Real Estate Show. One of the things that I always talk about is snow. We're here in New England, so of course we're going to get snow. We're going to get freezing rain. We're going to get ice on our walkways and in our driveways and so on and so forth. So snow becomes an extra challenge. You want to make sure that you go through the outside of the house and clear walkways and stairwells and driveways and things like that of anything that could be a trip hazard for buyers. You want to make sure that the approach to the home is comfortable. Now, sometimes buyers will come to look at a home with their realtor and they're going to park their cars in the street. So it's important that you pay attention to what the street situation is. You know, sometimes when we get a lot of snow, you'll have those big banks of snow piled up against the roads. You want to make sure that there's a little bit of safety that's involved. Maybe perhaps even go out with a shovel and kind of knock those hills down a little bit so that people can actually see the house when they're driving by rather than being, covered by snow. You want to also make sure that if they're going to come into your driveway, the driveway is clear of any snow and ice, especially if the driveway is not perfectly flat. You want to make sure that you're paying attention to any potential trip hazards. Now, I suggest that if you're going to put any kind of ice melting chemical on your driveway, that you stay away from sands and rock salts. There are some other things that you can buy out there that will basically do the same job but won't leave that residue. Because one of the challenges that we have when our house is on the market is we've got buyers coming into the home after they've just walked through a freshly sanded driveway or sidewalk or have gotten salt on their shoes. Now they're going to track that all over our carpets and our floors. Realtors sometimes try to head that off a little bit by recommending that any buyers that come in to view the home put on what's called booties. Usually the realtor will supply them. They're usually found right at the entrance of the home, and there'll be a courtesy sign put up by the seller that says, please put these plastic booties on over your shoes to protect our carpets and our floors. So if you see that, please take the time to do that. It's well appreciated. One of the other tips that I like to give about selling the home in winter is there's a lot of reflections going on. Snow is white and it's very, very bright. So sometimes the reflections that are going on may not show the house off in its best view. So one of the ways you can countermand that is by turning all of your lights on. And what I mean by that is you're going to go through the house and you're going to turn every single light in the house on. This causes the house to be nice and bright inside to match the brightness that's outside. Unless, of course, the home is being shown in the evening. Then it's just a no-brainer. You're going to have the lights on, right? Putting the lights on in the house also allows a buyer to go through and see the whole room, not just part of it. It also eliminates any dark corners. Now, one of the things we don't think about is if you have lights in your closets, turn those on too. Because buyers want to look inside closets. They want to see what kind of space there is. And I did a whole show a long time ago about organization and how to organize things in your home when you're getting it ready to sell. So I'll make a mention here when it comes to your closets. Make sure they're organized. Don't have your closets overstuffed with things. You want to thin them out a little bit so that if a buyer looks in a closet, they say, hey, there's a lot of room in here. My stuff will fit in here. Those kinds of things. Any stairwells need to be illuminated. Now, you can do this by turning the stairs on, the lights on at the top of the stairs or the bottom of the stairs, or maybe you have those lights that are runners that go up the stairs that will illuminate it. Again, you're trying to highlight everything you possibly can in the home by eliminating those dark colors. So lighting becomes very important. So you're going to clean all your walkways, you're going to put some booties out to protect your rugs and your floors, and you're going to light everything up in the house. There are some other tips that I like to give when you're looking to put your home on the market in the winter. One of the other things I like to talk about is making sure everything in the home is sparkling clean. Now, sometimes when we live in our homes, we don't see the everyday dirt type things, you know? We kind of ignore things. I mean, it's not that we're lazy or dirty or anything like that. It's just that we don't see these things because we live in the house and we kind of become blind to them. So sometimes it's helpful to have a neighbor or a friend come into the home and look at the house and maybe point out some of those things that you really haven't noticed. When I'm talking about cleaning the home, I'm talking also about, making sure that your carpets are vacuumed, your floors are washed and clean, countertops are clean, making sure that all the dust bunnies that might hide somewhere have been vacuumed up, there's no cobwebs in any corners, your curtains hang nicely, your windows are clean, all those things. So sometimes it takes a little extra work to really go through the whole house and clean it thoroughly so that it's nice and sparkling and fresh. It's lighted well, it's easy to get in, and it's also easy to walk around inside the house. Let's take a look at this quick presentation. I'll be back to talk about some more of my ideas and tips about when you're putting your house on the market in the winter. Have you ever thought about mood, setting the mood or staging the mood when it comes to selling anything? You want to display things in such a way that make it attractive for a buyer to want to buy it. So this is true when it comes to our homes, especially in the wintertime. So there's a number of different things you can consider as a seller in order to set the mood. In other words, make the home inviting to the buyer. One of the first things that you can do is make sure that the house is comfortable. In the wintertime, we all have to put the heat on here in New England. So you want to make sure that your heat is set in such a way that the home is comfortable, not too warm, not too cold. Now, how do you judge that? Well, there's a number of different ways that you can judge that. And one of the ways to do that is, again, rely on friends and relatives to come over and give their opinions. Does the house feel too warm? Does it feel too cold? Recommendations, usually if you keep the house between 68 and 72 degrees, you'll find that that's the most comfortable level for most people that come through the house. But you have to also keep in mind that when a buyer comes into your home during the wintertime, they're coming from the cold weather outside into your warm house. Most of the time they're wearing a jacket or a heavy sweater or something along those lines. And they're not going to take their jacket off or their sweater off when they come into the house. They're usually going to leave them on. So they're dressed warmly. And if your house is too hot, it's going to make it uncomfortable, and the buyer may not want to spend too much time in the home because they are uncomfortable and they're not really going to take it in and make a good decision of taking a look at the house. So you want to make sure that you set that temperature at a comfortable level. Maybe be a little bit cooler than you normally like because of the way the buyers are going to come in and go through the homes. Don't make it too cold, but again, don't make it too hot. You can also set an atmosphere. Now, when I'm talking about an atmosphere, I'm talking about something like making sure that the house looks inviting, putting up a couple of displays, setting the table, perhaps, putting out some floral arrangements. If it's Christmas time, you can put up holiday decorations, things along those lines to make the home feel like a home, not just a house. There are also a number of little techniques you can also do in setting that atmosphere. Now, realtors are full of all kinds of suggestions of what you can do. And there's pros and cons. One of the suggestions that I've heard is to have some soft holiday music, if that's the season, playing in the background. Nothing too loud, nothing too outrageous, nothing too specific to taste, but just some general soft music in the background to kind of give a relaxing and welcoming feeling when someone comes into the house to look around. You got to be careful. I mean, not a lot of people, some people, don't like certain types of music or don't like, Christmas music or whatever it might be. So you want to put something generalized in there. You can never go wrong with traditional songs. Traditional stuff usually is accepted by everyone because you're hearing it in the stores, you're hearing it, when you're out there in the field. So you might want to do that for the house itself. Not too loud now. I always make the recommendation, don't have music so loud because it may have a reverse effect. Buyers sometimes, if they walk into a house and they hear a lot of loud music, they think maybe you're trying to cover up something, that maybe the furnace makes a lot of noise and you're trying to cover it up by having loud music playing. So just soft, calming music. Another way of setting the mood is to do with scent. Now, scents are difficult because you don't want anything that's too overpowering in the house. Usually I say to folks, if you're listing your home at Christmas time and you follow Christmas traditions and you have a Christmas tree, usually that's just enough. Just the scent of the tree is enough to make the house feel holiday-like and welcoming. But you might want to add something like a non-burning scented candle. And I say non-burning because you don't want to leave candles burning in the house when you're not there. But there are different types of things that you can do to add smells or scents that are pleasant throughout the house. Potpourris and things along those lines. I even had a realtor once say to me that they get some apple cinnamon and they actually boil some water on the stove and dissolve the apple cinnamon to give that kind of smell that you're baking a pie in the house, and they do that just before a showing. Now, that's not going to happen every time, but it's an interesting idea. Again, you're trying to set a mood. You want a buyer to be able to come into the house and feel at home. Feel that this is a place that they feel welcomed in, that they'd like to welcome their friends in, they'd love to live in, It might incentivize them to make an offer. Let's look at these other quick tips about selling in winter, and I'll be back to talk a little bit more about some other ideas. I'm talking here on the Real Estate Show about selling your home in the wintertime and some of the tips and some of the things to consider when you're putting your house on the market. One of the things I like to spend some time talking about is highlighting certain features of a home. Now, some of us are fortunate enough to have homes that have some unique architecture in it. And you want to try to highlight that because you want buyers to notice. If you live, for instance, in an old style, craftsman style home where you had a lot of nice woodwork throughout the house, you want to draw attention to that. You can draw attention by the way you place furniture. You can draw attention by the way something is lit. Like, for instance, if you have a built-in bookcase that is lighted, you might want to put those lights on so you can show that off. Another way of doing that is to put out what we call a storybook. Now, one of the things that's hard to do in the wintertime is you can't really showcase your yard because there's snow on the ground, right? The leaves are off the trees, the flowers are no longer in bloom, and so on and so forth. So if you have photographs of the home during the spring and summer season, you can put those pictures out for display. If you've done any updates or improvements on the home over the time that you've been living there, you want to put those together on some kind of itemized sheet and have those available for the buyers to look at. I once went into a home where a lot of remodeling had been done, and the seller put the before and the after pictures, so that a buyer was able to see what the house looked like before, like for instance the kitchen, and what it looked like as they're viewing it. Here's the now. To just kind of enhance and show, here are improvements we have made. If you've done anything to the mechanical systems of the house, if you've done things like roofs or added a deck or anything like that, you want to make sure that buyers know that. And it's good to list those things and put the year that it was done. You don't have to put the month and date, but just the year that it was done, so that people have a good idea of this is how old the roof is, this is when the furnace was replaced, and so on and so forth. If you have any areas of the house that could be multifunctional, like maybe you have a room in the house that's not technically a bedroom but could be a bedroom, you might want to make a mention of that, as far as when people are going through the house. Here's some additional ways you can, live in this house and use the room in the house. I also like to talk a little bit about basements. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a finished basement, you want to highlight that because that's more square footage to live in the house. Realtors, when they list a home for sale, are required to put the square footage of the home, and it's usually the living square footage. They won't put down any square footage of space that's not considered livable space, like attic space if it's not heated. Basements, depends on the basement. We do have a line when we do list homes that allow us to add the square footage of the home that we call below grade. In other words, the basement. So if there's living space down there, it's a finished room or an open room that can be finished, we can put that square footage so that the buyer can get a general idea of the size of the house and the additional space in the house. Some of the other things that you can do to highlight the home is to make a list of those features of the house that are very attractive. In other words, how big a bedroom is, closet space, that the house has, 2 bathrooms instead of 1 bathroom, or it has a half bathroom somewhere else, or the convenience of a storage shed that may be out in the yard, storage space in the basement, perhaps the garage, things along those lines. Because you want the buyer who's only spending maybe 5-10 minutes in the house to get a general idea of the possibilities of the home. You want to absorb them. You want to bring them in and give them some ideas of, if you purchase this home, here are some of the things that have been done. Here are some of the things you could do. Here are some of the things and the flexibility of the home of the size. Let's take a quick look at this final presentation. I'll be back with some final comments here on The Real Estate Show. I've been talking here on The Real Estate Show about putting your home on the market during the winter season. And it's kind of a traditional show. I like to do this about this time every year. Our minds are looking at the holidays. We're thinking of the new year coming along. We're making plans. And if we're a seller that's putting our house on the market, we have that additional stress, that additional thought of getting our house sold. Buyers who come out in the winter to look at homes that are for sale in the winter are serious buyers. It's not fun to move a household in the cold weather, so you have to be of a serious mind to be wanting to do that. There has to be a need there. And if you as a seller have made your home welcoming and inviting, and a buyer is serious and you've pointed out those things that are welcoming and inviting as to why your house is better than, say, another house that's on the market, you may be able to elicit that offer on the house that's acceptable so that you all accomplish your goal and all have the possibility of the buyer having a new home to move into and the seller selling their home so that they can move on. My name is Rick Naples, and this has been The Real Estate Show. I thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.
Sometimes life just happens. Don't worry. Farmington Motorsports will get you back on the road and at a fair price. From towing to tires, emissions to transmissions.
Our ASC certified techs do it all.
Farmington Motorsports is a family-run business. We're a Napa Auto Center and AAA approved. We work on all makes and models from preventative maintenance to major repairs.
And every repair is backed by our 2-year, 24,000-mile nationwide warranty.
When life happens to you, don't worry. Farmington Motorsports.